Test 1, 2, 3.
Did he even use any of that? All right, I'm going to call the April 6th, 2023 Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners special meeting to order. Clerk, would you please take roll?
Commissioner DeLu,
Here.
Commissioner Gisler,
Here.
Vice Chair Pro Tem Hepler,
Here.
Commissioner Mazer,
Here.
Commissioner Morales,
Present.
Vice Chair Ray, Commissioner Stretz,
Here.
Chair Taylor,
Here.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Here.
9 present.
All right, next up on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the Board of Commissioners. Please give us your name and address, and keep in mind you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jim Ferner. I live on Berkeley Street in Kalamazoo Township. I'd like to testify about this arena. Retired economics professor at Western has said that the predictions of all this money coming in might be off. And the way he says that is that, for example, at a Super Bowl, when they have all these huge predictions, a tremendous magnitude of benefits. But when you look at the actual benefits in communities, it's been estimated it's probably more along the magnitude of 1/10 of what was forecast. So, and there's also what he calls a substitution effect. People have only so much money to spend on entertainment. And if they've been going to downtown entertainment and then this thing comes in and they go there, they're not going to be going both places. All right. So they spend less at places they go, like the theater and that. And also taxpayers could end up covering some of these costs. I know you've all said there's no public money involved and there won't be any public money involved, but you're here for 2 years. And who knows what kind of commission is going to come after that and what they're going to do. And I bet you if they need money, they'll go to the source. The other thing is that I don't see a timer on this thing, but this city has been run in a paternalistic manner from the late 1800s when Dr. Upjohn in his paternalistic way provided almost everything, like a company town. And we've had a process that exists until this day. The civic leaders decide on something and then they push it through because they know what's best for us. The little peon or the person with his cardboard sign asking for money, they don't know what's going on, okay? So the faster we can get this thing done, the better. We have very little time to comment. And it's being done again with this thing. What's wrong with taking a longer look at it? And if these people have got so much money to put into an arena, then they're not paying enough taxes. And they're not. The tax rate has gone down from 90% in Kennedy's time to 30% today. And what's happened? They've cut out services so that the mental hospitals have closed, the social services have been cut, mentally ill go to jail where they get their meds. I know, I used to tutor in jails. So you need to take a better look at this and make sure the whole community is being served, not a segment of middle class. We need affordable housing, we need education, we need healthcare. There's a lot of needs out there, and I don't see this thing as supplying any of them, and it might not even supply the needs that are being rosily touted right before the thing goes in. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Maddie Jordan Woods. I live at 902 West Patterson. I am the director of the Northside Association for Community Development. And obviously I am here in support of the arena, and I hope that you guys will be in support of it as well. My understanding is that there were some questions concerning that the word BIPOC, and that if it was put in, it could be challenged later. I just had my eyes dilated, so I don't know if I can be able to read. So I'm gonna try. I looked at, and so I'm going to be where it said to set aside 20% of all food and beverage concession space located in the Arena Event Center, to be occupied and operated by one or more. I was hoping that you all would agree to a change of more underserved, underrepresented, historically disenfranchised, and historically excluded vendors. So that would allow, and we were able to do that with the Northside Cultural Business District. When we did our neighborhood plan, we were very specific on race, and two different attorneys told us that although you have good intentions and there may be good reasons, you can be challenged and everything that you work for is thrown out. And so by putting this language in, then that allows for the intent to be in place. So, you know, I wasn't going to come here tonight. I felt that as a whole, that the arena project would help everyone, and that I had been going all those years saying, how would it affect us? And I thought if I came here tonight, they would think, well, you're coming because they've offered to give you $6 million, the Northside Association, $6 million to go towards our plan. And so I wasn't going to say anything to see. And then I thought about it. I said, you know what? I'm going to speak as an individual, as a taxpayer, and as a potential business owner in the Northside Cultural Business District. And I hope that you all will look at it as a whole, how it will affect everyone. They're absolutely right. But that they believed enough in this city to be able to put their own money up. So I thank you for that. And if there's any questions, the city of Kalamazoo's planning department and the city commission approved the new language that we had to take out of our plan and put that language in. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name's Savannah. I live at 605 West Kalamazoo Avenue. I am in District 1. I am one of the really, really close houses to this proposed project. And what I see happening, if you put this in, I see a huge rent increase happening. I've already got a landlord who's talking about wanting to make my apartment an Airbnb because it's so close to downtown. What's going to happen when you put this arena in? Well, now the property value is going to go up, right? Maybe even triple what it was. So what I see happening is you're going to see a huge rent increase in these surrounding areas. That's going to push people like me out, right? It's going to push people of color out in the north side. And then I also see the second problem being, I work at the hospital, I work in ICU. And I see this intersection at Kalamazoo Avenue and North Park, right? So you have this intersection where people are blowing that light. I have a speed log that I've been taking so that I can bring that to the city and say, hey, there's people speeding out of control. Sometimes I see people blow that light as high as like 100 miles an hour. And then I also see this large homeless population, which I know you guys are all aware of. Kalamazoo has this large homeless problem that still hasn't really quite been dealt with. And I know that's a complex problem, but when you have this large population on foot coming in and out of this street all the time, you're proposing to put more traffic into that area. And when you increase the amount of traffic coming into an area where there's already a problem at that dangerous stoplight, you're going to increase the amount of injuries, right? So not only are you going to increase the rent, you're going to increase the amount of traumatic incidents for pedestrians. And then also, I don't think that our police department is equipped to be able to do traffic control right now. We're short-staffed. I don't see them being able to adequately handle an increase in traffic violations on that street anytime soon, not within the next 4 years, I would predict. So I'm just sick of seeing people come in with broken legs. I'm sick of it. I wish that we would take that into consideration. And then lastly, you know, I just don't think it makes sense to have another event center. What's wrong with the two that we already have? We've got the Wings Event Center, and then we've got the Expo Center. What are their business plans like? How well are they doing? Do we actually need a third event space within Kalamazoo City? I think that you could probably use that space for things like housing or some other purpose that would serve the community a lot better, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens wishing to address the board? Kevin, can you advise if there is anybody on pre-recorded line or online?
Yes, Chair, we have no recorded calls this evening. Dina, may you advise on any hands that are raised on Zoom, please?
We do not have any hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us out of public comment. And now on the discussion of the proposed purchase agreement. I guess Kevin or Angelino, if one of you two want to. Angelina?
Thank you, Chair. I heard the comments of the board and I worked with Catalyst Council to address several of those issues. And what I want to do is walk through some of those modifications that were made in the agreement that we're putting before you this evening. The first thing that I want to point out is that originally there was a provision. It is on page 3 of the document of the proposed purchase agreement. It's paragraph 7. This particular paragraph talked about how the board would, or how the county would resolve the fact that it has existing legal obligations under an irrevocable license to the West Michigan Cancer Center, or WMCC. The original plan and the draft that you had at the last meeting anticipated that the way we would handle that is we would enter into a document that was drafted. It was attached as Exhibit B previously. And it was to be executed once Catalyst had finished building the new ramp. In the interim, while the ramp was being built, the county would be allowed to use the parcels that they are selling for parking and to meet its obligations to WMCC for up to 24 months. And then when the new ramp was finished, WMCC would then move its parking into the new ramp. And at that time, we would be executing that document B, which would be a termination of the irrevocable license and a lease, no-cost lease for 85 spaces to the Cancer Center into that new parking structure. I had the opportunity to talk with counsel for the WMCC, and they were not in support of that particular arrangement of, I'll say, legal mechanism and what we were going to use to do it. So we have actually removed Exhibit B in its entirety. It has new language now. So the new language is that upon the expiration of the 24-month period, the buyer, so that will be Catalyst, shall enter into a direct agreement with WMCC to provide for their parking needs. They'll still provide those 85 parking spaces in the new ramp at no cost for 16 years. That's the remainder of the irrevocable license. The distinction here is that counsel for WMCC wants a direct agreement that does not include the county at all. So previously we're all three signing a document. We're going to effectuate that with two documents now. WMCC and Catalyst will negotiate their own terms, and they will take on those obligations and do exactly what they were going to do previously in terms of providing for their parking needs. And then we will execute a separate amendment that will terminate the irrevocable license and all obligations of the county. And now, because those are documents to be signed in the future when the ramp is complete, we are going to still put together a document that'll will have the amendment and we'll have the lease, and those are to be signed along with the purchase. So there'll be contracts executed now, but they are triggered upon the completion of the new ramp. So we're not waiting in the future to sign these documents. It's a better option for everybody. And through the passage of time, we don't lose perhaps, someone leadership changes at WMCC or new council and they decide they're not, nobody's signing or any other possibilities. So council for WMCC is writing that currently. So I'll be getting a draft of that. We don't have it now because we don't need it quite yet. There's also language in this that makes it a contingency of closing of the sale. So we have to have the amendment and the direct agreement to resolve the irrevocable license and all MCC's WMCC's parking needs before we can go through. If that fails, that would be a failed contingency against the sale. So that's kind of the first piece of it. And then the next major component you'll find on page let's see. Oh, no, it's not major, but I do want to note it. So go to page 6, paragraph 17. These are the buyer's contributions for community benefit, or what we've been referring to as the community benefit agreement. There's going to be several things in here that I wanted to address. We had an exhibit in here that was the North Side Neighborhood Plan. The goal in integrating that as an exhibit and incorporating it into this contract was because several places in this contract refer back to it. It refers to the neighborhoods contained therein, the work that was done in the community, and all the effort that went into that plan. We want it to be furthered through these benefits. The original document that was before you had about 13 pages that weren't actually the plan. They were slides and various other things. So we cleaned that up and took them out. But we also reconfirmed that the plan actually is incorporated in the contract with some minor adjustments. I wanted to note on page 6 at the bottom here, we did get that they're going to appoint a primary contact responsible to coordinate, implement, and work on the execution of these commitments. And that was important to the county in terms of making sure we had an identifiable person who was going to help carry these commitments through. The next critical component is on page 7 in B, and this was something raised last time, which is the 20% of fully furnished constructed food and beverage concession space. The new proposed language, we did remove the term reference to BIPOC. It is now that these spaces are to be occupied and operated by one or more business owners from historically or economically disadvantaged communities who reside in Kalamazoo County, with an emphasis on business owners who reside in one of those neighborhoods identified in the Northside Neighborhood Plan. And so anywhere that we saw BIPOC previously, we replaced that with business owners from historically and economically disadvantaged communities for the very reasons that were raised by Commissioner Stubbs and the representative from NACD, and to ensure that our determinations are made to impact those in that local area in a way that won't be challenged. In addition to this, if you flip the page to 8, E, that's the language that's added there. This is a new provision that has been added to the contract. This is it's made a contingency, but it's also a provision at the end of the agreement. So Catalyst is giving an option for them to offer to sell the premises that we are selling back to the county at the same exact price identified in paragraph 3 of this agreement if Catalyst fails to commence construction of a privately funded event center within 5 years. So this is to address the issue that if they never go forward with the event center, maybe they just built a parking structure or whatnot, the county has the first right to purchase that land back if they haven't begun construction in that 5-year period. And so the reason it's a contingency is because we need to negotiate and draft an actual option document that satisfies that, and it'll take a little longer than this component. And so, but the key terms are, they have to commence construction in 5 years. The sale is back to us at the same price, and then essentially that we get the first option to purchase that back. So that's new. The other component here, you'll see the language, and this is the language I referenced about contingencies about resolving that irrevocable license. That's all contained in B. And that's just that we shall have executed that amendment and that direct lease. Or alternatively, there's a provision, we need to reach some other mutually agreeable resolution to provide for the parking needs. And that just gives us flexibility in case we're looking at it and we decide there's a better tool between the three of us. That would be WMCC, the county, and Catalyst. I wanted to provide for that so that we weren't blocked in to this particular, either an amendment or a direct lease. The next component is on page 10. And we're looking at, I just wanted to highlight in paragraph 26, this agreement does have language making it binding and inuring to the benefits of the parties as well as their respective successors. And paragraph 27 highlights this even more so, that should Catalyst sell the property, such sale requires that purchaser or assign assignee to assume all obligations in this contract, which expressly include contributions for community benefit described in paragraph 17. That was particularly important too, should the development change hands or be purchased out, that these commitments withstand any such purchase. So that is incorporated in here. I wanted to back up a little bit. I'm talking about what did get added to the agreement, but one of the things that we were looking at is the reduction in rent. And so backing up kind of to page 7, where we talk about those historically and economically disadvantaged communities being offered this 20% of fully furnished space. Catalyst is offered to do a minimum of a 30% rent reduction. I did engage in negotiations with them today. And one of the things that we ask is, could we do a tiered plan where maybe for the first 1 to 2 years, it was 50%, then 40, then 30. Catalyst did not support that and would like to keep the language as proposed in this document this evening. But one thing I did want to share with the board this evening is counsel on behalf of Catalyst did write back and indicate that and highlight, he said, we want to point out that the agreement says not less than a 30% reduction. So they are free to reduce rent even further under this agreement if they choose to do so. And then they said, so if a qualified vendor were to be identified and need a little extra assistance, Catalyst would be open to a reduction greater than 30% should that arise. And so given that they've shared that, I thought that important to share with this board to kind of go toward that goal of ensuring that those businesses don't have a barrier to getting into that space. And I believe there might be 2 final things here. Looking at page 12, there is an enforcement provision of this. I know that there have been multiple questions raised about how is this agreement enforceable, and I wanted to highlight those and how this would be enforced because I believe this is very valuable language in here. In particular, the county pursuant to this agreement or the seller has the ability to pursue all legal remedies should this contract be breached. And that would include the community benefits components. That includes expressly stated specific performance, which means asking the court to force somebody to uphold the agreements that are in this document, declaratory judgment, meaning a court directing someone to act, monetary damages, or other available legal or equitable remedies. In addition to that, if we have to use the court to pursue that remedy to enforce any of our rights under this contract, the costs, expenses, as well as attorney's fees to do so are recoverable. And that's an important contractual component because attorney's fees aren't recoverable unless they're in statute or by contract. So we wouldn't want to rack up a bunch of money trying to enforce this or fighting over it. So we thought that was important language to have in here, and that seemed like good enforcement. And then paragraph 33 is new. This is called a severability of invalid provisions. Essentially what this does for us, if any component of this agreement were to be declared to be illegal, invalid, unenforceable, or not able to move forward, it preserves the remainder of the agreement. So if possible, it would strike that language and the rest of it would continue, so it wouldn't sort of poison the well for the rest of the components or provisions. However, it's important when you do this type of language that you have a second component in that that says, if the provision being stricken is the material or essence of the contract, like you couldn't sell the land or a major component of it, and that's analyzed case by case and facts, and it would, when they do that analysis, they look at what was the negotiation, what were all the communications around getting the agreement, that the agreement shall terminate. And so that still could be a possibility, because what you don't want with a severability is you don't want to lose like the major component, but you still have to go through and do one tiny piece that really wasn't what the parties were going for. So we've got both of those parts in here. And then 34 is just that buyback clause. So this is the actual language that talks about should buyer not commence the construction of the event center within 5 years, then the county gets to have that option to buy it back pursuant to an option document, which we will be drafting, which is also a contingency. So I will yield at this time. Those are the modifications that were made since the last meeting.
And thank you, Angelina, for all your hard work on this. It's greatly appreciated. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Hepler had his hand? Commissioner Straps.
Thank you so much, Chair Taylor. So, Council, thank you again for so much work. And to this board, I want us to recognize the significant number of meaningful changes that were needed in this contract. And it's important for us to slow down and be mindful about the work that we're doing on behalf of the community. So I'm pleased that we've taken the effort to do that. My question for council: failed contingency of the sale. Can you specify exactly, again, the contingencies? There are a number enumerated without having to, kind of read all of it out loud, but it's any of those, when there's a failed contingency of that sale, what happens then to the entirety of the contract? Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, I can. In general, when there's a failed contingency, there are provisions in here, and I want to find the default provisions. There's usually an opportunity to cure. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So, when the buyer does their due diligence, they have components. So if they identify defects, they have opportunities to cure. They have approximately 30 days to cure those things. Contingencies are similar in that we would raise those or find that they weren't met, give the other party an opportunity to cure. And if they did not cure, then the purchase doesn't go forward. And the standard on the contingencies is, it's to reasonable satisfaction. So we can't unreasonably withhold it. So for example, A is the transaction in this agreement has to be approved by the county commission. That's an easy one. B, buyer, seller, and West Michigan Cancer Center have to execute the amendment and the direct agreement and deal with WMCC's parking needs. If one of us says, I'm not going to participate in the negotiation, I'm done with this, like that's not a reasonable approach to that. But if we work and we can't reach reasonable satisfaction, we get the time to cure, and then the purchase wouldn't go forward. It would impact the deal. So those contingencies, just kind of a quick overview of them. For the buyer, there needs to be the due diligence review, which includes an environmental assessment, physical inspection, survey, and title review. We need to negotiate and draft the option to lease parking spaces. That's actually already done. That's exhibit B, so that's already met. And then buyer has to get financing and development assistance. And then they also need to get possession and control of the parcels located between Park Street, West Nudge Avenue, Eleanor Street, and Water Street from the current owner. So they're buying other lands that they have to secure as one of their contingencies. And then the option to buy language. So we're going to work on drafting that buyback language so that the county can buy it back if they don't build the center. In terms of the contingencies to seller, we have to get it approved by the board. We have to negotiate the irrevocable license. And that's kind of it for those components.
Thank you. I want to just draw our attention to section 18, item E. And this is speaking to the ability, right of first refusal, contingencies to close for the buyer. Item E, I just want to ask further on the language, buyer and seller shall have agreed upon the form of the option for buyer to offer to sell the premises back to the county at the price in paragraph 3. This agreement should buyer not commence construction of a privately funded event center within 5 years. So it stipulates that this event center will be privately funded as one of the contingencies in the contract. And if not, then it is available to the county to repurchase at the price from which it's been sold. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any more commissioners or questions? Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner, Vice Chair Tammy Ray.
Excuse me, thank you. I just have one question. On page 7, letter B, when it speaks to the space that will be leased out, the language was changed and it talks about business owners who reside in one of the neighborhoods identified in the Northside Neighborhood Plan. We don't have a copy of that plan. Can you speak to what neighborhoods that is speaking to exactly?
If I would, if the board would entertain it, Manny would probably be best to speak to that. It's one of the exhibits to the document, but I don't know the neighborhoods expressly off the top of my head. It defines them in the parameter, but it's Manny.
Oh, they couldn't hear me? They usually say they can. It is the North Side neighborhood. That's what, when the city commission convened, every neighborhood had to do a plan individually. So if you just put North Side neighborhood.
I'm trying to pull it up. It actually is intended to refer to, when you pull up the plan document, it has maps and it outlines the parameters. And so by neighborhood, it's referring to those respective geographic communities.
So in the plan, the residents, the neighborhood was divided into 5 sections where people talked about things that they wanted because it was close to where they lived. So that's the 5, you'll see 5 areas within the, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, please. Rank it.
The idea here is that everything that was in the plan, we wanted to use the maps that are in the plan to define the parameters rather than going through like legal land descriptions and those things. So we made the entire plan an exhibit to cover the North Side neighborhood as the general broad consensus. But we wanted to, because we were requiring business owners to be from that neighborhood area, and we're using the word neighborhood informally, meaning like, you know, a little subsection of it could be a neighborhood, that the people have to reside within those geographic boundaries. Because we just say the neighborhood, it didn't necessarily have any boundaries around it. So that's why the plan itself is included. So
Our neighborhood has boundaries. I'm sorry, but as long as it's as long as it is understood that that the neighborhood plan was for the North Side neighborhood, and it says the census tracts in it, then I'm fine. I think we're,
Referring to this, so that's in your.
so
plan.
that's, but again, that was divided, that's the whole North Side neighborhood. And so it was streets that were combined, and residents from those streets in those areas, they marked up, so that is in there. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Stewart neighborhood has a neighborhood plan.
Right now, the chair is going to recognize Maddie. I'm new to this.
Yeah, it's the entire North Side. It's the entire, I'm sorry.
No, you have the floor. I'm giving you the floor.
It is literally the entire North Side neighborhood. It's just like that, the Westnedge, like on Ada, Westnedge and all of that, it was just called off as section 1, section 2, but it is the North Side neighborhood. But
We have a map. And
Yeah, show the map.
that we're intending to use, and I don't know how to show it. It's map 1 focus area within the plan. And it outlines it in red. It's like, I don't know how to
Curtis,
show it.
Curtis,
but
the
That's why we reference the plan.
Right now, I'm going to have Maddie talk and the chair recognizes you. Right now, from my understanding, there is a map that has been done by the city of Kalamazoo that encompasses the entirety of the North Side Neighborhood Association. What those boundaries are currently in the map and the plan.
So the city of Kalamazoo recognized it as that on the map would show Douglas would be to the west on what would be the east side of Douglas, that Dunkley is the city boundary, and it would go over to the east would be all the way, Harrison is probably the closest street, and the southern boundary is Willard, the railroad tracks. So that encompasses Edwards, all of the streets in the neighborhood.
And this
In the
map,
North Side.
and this question is directed, I guess, towards corporate counsel. The map is online and within the city of Kalamazoo's neighborhood association, correct?
I pulled the exact plan from NACD's website that was adopted by the city by resolution, and it is the exhibit, and it is the map parameter of what we're talking about.
Okay, so to answer Tammy's question, the map from the city of Kalamazoo is the neighborhood association they're talking about.
Just a follow-up question. Thank you, Maddie. It's for corporate counsel. I don't have the old language in front of us that we had 2 days ago. My question is, can you turn off your microphone? Thank you. So with this new language, is this making this less inclusive? Because it's not just no longer speaking to BIPOC as a whole. Now we're speaking to a specific neighborhood, which is fine, but I'm wondering if we should instead use the language of underserved, underrepresented, historically disenfranchised, or historically included, as that would be more inclusive. This is just, to me, feels like we're excluding some folks with this new language.
And before I give it to corporate counsel to answer, I think some of the concerns was raised by Commissioner Strebs in that the previous language opened ourselves, or not ourselves, but opened up Catalyst and opened up others to potential liability, legal liability. So that's why those words were changed.
I'm not asking for us to use the term BIPOC again. I understand the backlash with that. I'm asking us to use the language of underserved, underrepresented, historically disenfranchised, and historically excluded, as this just referring to an identified neighborhood in the Northside Neighborhood Plan, then in turn makes this less inclusive to the BIPOC community as a whole in the county of Kalamazoo, if that is making sense to anybody.
Commissioner Strebs wants to.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Ray is exactly right. But I want to point out, we have potentially partial language to that effect, and maybe that needs to be expanded upon. But in item B, It does say business owners from historically or economically disadvantaged communities, as described above. So that's the terminology, it just uses historically or economically disadvantaged. So we should include underserved and so just that part of the language is there. So I don't know, Commissioner Ray feels like we need to expand upon that, then I think we certainly should.
I'm gonna jump in here. We've trusted our staff. We've hired our staff. We've entrusted our staff to enter into negotiations in this contract. We several times, we're having a special meeting here because we've discussed this on Tuesday and we came back with changes, and there are some changes in this. But I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, corporate counsel, but I don't think this is a chance to negotiate. I think this is either an acceptance or not an acceptance. Am I correct in that?
The understanding is that this is up for approval. If I may, though, it's actually more inclusive. And the prior language expressly said that it was the NACD neighborhood. And so all we did is insert the word plan in the version you had at the last meeting. It was always restricted to that plan neighborhoods, but it was BIPOC business owners from those neighborhoods. Now it's occupied and operated by historically and economically disadvantaged communities who reside in Kalamazoo County. It got bigger with an emphasis on business owners who live in the neighborhood. So it's much broader than it used to be and includes many more people.
Commissioner Wheeler and then Commissioner Morales.
I'm just curious because I've heard some things of who exactly engaged in negotiations with this contract. 'Cause I know we do trust our staff, but some of us have law degrees and some of us don't, is my thing.
Staff has been primarily, Angelina has been 99% of it.
So you, Chair, didn't engage in any of the negotiations. It was Angelina.
When we first, this board first passed a motion to have chair, vice chair, and vice chair pro tem engage in negotiations regarding parking. And that was about a month and a half ago. In the negotiations, 99% of it has been done by corporate counsel and their attorneys. Have I not? I mean, this board instructed me, Tammy Ray, and Jeff Hepler to start negotiations with this. I am not a lawyer. I'm not going to be able, and I apologize, I can do a lot of things, but I cannot get down to the nitty gritty of what two lawyers can negotiate. So no, I did not enter into the negotiations with the technicalities of the map of the district or any of that stuff. That's legal stuff I allowed the lawyers to work on. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. What about rent reduction?
Rent reduction as far as? Oh, for the communities of that, most of that has been done with this. There's been far more negotiations happening from this board. What I wanted to speak to is we can continue to go down the road of negotiating this and pushing this down the road. But I think the time for action is now. I don't think it's time to start negotiating language when we've got an up or down contract to vote on. So I don't think that. As far as me negotiating this, I don't have the ability to negotiate the technicalities of a 35-page document. That's up to our staff. And when I say we trust our staff, we have to trust our staff. They have gone twice. We've asked them twice to go and negotiate, and twice they've come back with contracts, and we've had concerns, and we're going forward. So, are there any other commissioners with questions? Commissioner Straps.
Thank you so much, Chair. Just for council, were you aware of anyone else negotiating terms on the contract?
Commissioner Streps, my understanding is that Kevin, Administrator Catlin, I apologize, Administrator Catlin and Chair Taylor did have communications, but they were on the parking and the rates of the parking. And then in terms of the real estate purchase document, myself and the Council for Catalyst are the only people who have written in this document, received this document, or worked on this particular document. I was sort of peripherally aware that there were Mr. Ellison may have been speaking to Chair Taylor or to Administrator Catlin about various issues. But in terms of exchanging language, that's only been done with myself and Catalyst's attorney.
The only other thing I'll enter, we do trust staff and count on them to work on this for us, but we saw a version of this contract on Tuesday with multiple concerns on it that was presented to us by both parties' counsel, and without the revisions that we lifted up, they were potentially vulnerable to legal challenge. So I think it's important for us to not only recognize, but respect the advocacy of the representative of the North Side neighborhood and give consideration to language they feel comfortable with. I just want to ensure that Vice Chair Ray feels like this contract meets the conditions so that we're getting the community benefits we're intending to see.
Are there any other commissioners that wish to comment? Commissioner Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I see a lot of great positives that come out of a contract such as this, but I also see a lot of negatives, and I'm just really concerned with what it's going to do for renters in this area and people who are living paycheck to paycheck, which is a lot of most of us, in property values, with paying taxes and having mortgage payments go up. So that's my biggest concern. I myself pay $1,115 a month in rent living in Portage. And I know for a lot of people that's impossible. So while this is on the sale, I do just want to put forth that I do want to see, hopefully, some sort of collaboration with the city of Kalamazoo in maybe limiting what like a percentage of these rentals that are in the area can be turned into Airbnbs or such as that, because that would force out many renters and gentrify that area, which is what we're trying to avoid with this community benefits plan. So that's just something that I wanted to uplift, is a concern I've heard from many people. And I know that that is definitely not the intention, but it is a reality that it could definitely happen, that these landowners will see a business opportunity, and then now we have even more of a housing issue than we did before. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Well, I will start with this. I've had the authority to sign this for quite some time. I have not, out of respect for this board, out of respect for trying to get unanimity and trying to get us as to move forward in one. The cohesion of this board is very important to me. It's obviously very important to me. I've put aside signing something I was potentially legally obligated to do so at the expense of trying to have this board of cohesion. I have had a conversation, 2 or 3 conversations with Mr. Ellison, mostly about the process and how slow this process has gone, and what steps need to be taken in order for this to move forward. Not of the details of the contract, as was alluded to earlier. I don't know where you've gotten that information from, but I think it's wholly inappropriate to bring it up here. But I did have conversations with the process, and I've talked to people from Catalyst on how we are going to move this forward. I have not had conversations with specifics of this detail, but this has been a long time coming. This is over 20 years they've been talking about this project. $350 million, $300 million with $54 million in economic development each and every year. Now there is somebody commented today that $54 million might be replacement dollars. Let's just say, for instance, it's 1/10 of that. We're talking about selling a $4 million piece of property for, if it is only 1/10, $5.4 million a year in economic development. I think that's a no-brainer win, even if those numbers at 1/10 were correct. We're also talking about a $6 million investment into the north side of our community. We're talking about transformational wealth to citizens in Kalamazoo County and increased property value, increased tax base for a city that desperately needs it. This project, in my mind, is long overdue. And without objection from this board, I intend to sign this immediately following this meeting, unless there is a majority of people that on this board right now that do not want me to do so. If there is a motion that says that I will not sign it, I will not sign it. But as of right now, I have full intention of signing this after this board. Are there any other Commissioner Gissler?
Thank you, Chair. Over the 20 years, I haven't been a commissioner for 20 years, as a couple of you have, but the 3 times that this has come up, I was dead set against it because it was not going to generate tax revenues. It was going to be supported and funded through county funds. And I'm totally turned around and I support you signing this tonight. Let's get on with it and see those economic benefits begin to roll. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that there's a misunderstanding about the support for this project on this board. When it comes to our constituents and they have concerns and we cannot properly address them, then it is our duty to make sure we come to this dais and do so. So if it took another week or two, we're gonna pass it, but we need to make sure that when we have someone coming that's living in the middle of the north side, that sees the disasters coming on, that says she works in the ICU, we need to take that into consideration. So for me, I feel like the disrespect is that we can't ask questions when it's our communities that are being affected. This is not happening in Portage, Schoolcraft, Cooper, or anywhere else. It's happening right here. So moving forward, I know billionaires are doing this stuff, but I'm an average worker. My salary is public, both of them. So when it comes to this and everything that's encompassed in this, it's important to me to address issues. Now, for me, I don't care how much time it takes to make something right, period. And I'm gonna stick to that. Do I want the north side to thrive? It deserves to thrive, especially with what our city has done to the north side. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about tax breaks, explosions, or anything that's going on that's contaminating District 1. So when it comes to any contract coming up here, and I know you have authority and that's fine, but you also have to count on our votes and you have a team to work with. So with that, I am in support of the project now that I got the information that I needed to protect my community. Thank you.
Are there any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Straps.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just want to recognize the excellent colleague to my right, Commissioner Morales, for what you just lifted up and articulated. I'd like to just further express, I don't know when would be a better time to talk about the negotiation of a contract while we are discussing the contract. When is the time otherwise to discuss it? And as far as timeline, we received an initial contract that was faulty on Monday. It's Thursday. This isn't taking forever. It's like a little over 48 hours for something that's going to impact this community for generations. I'm proud of the work that we've put in here. Issues this community has raised about affordable housing, about the impact of the environment, about traffic, about the impacts on healthcare, police presence, et cetera, are all issues that still have to be addressed. This process does not end here. This is a land sale. There is a process which will continue on through site review and permitting, and this community needs to engage in that process, lift up their vision for what this community looks like, articulate what we need to address, and let's find those solutions to that, and let's be prosperous together in that process. Thank you.
So seeing no other commissioners and no motion to reconsider, I will be signing this after tonight. Are there any other commissioners that wish to speak? Without that, we are adjourned.